Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
I'm Scott Warr, and we are super excited to bring on multiple-time guest, recurring guest, Matt Fitzgerald. He's an acclaimed author. Get this, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt. I went to your website. 31 books so far. 31 books you've published so far. Is that correct?
I think it's actually more now. I haven't updated that in a minute. So yeah, maybe 35 even.
Ooh. Okay, well, get it updated. I want to. Yeah. I evidently my library's not up to date either.
Yep.
He's also a coach running the Dream Running Camp in Flagstaff. He's a nutritionist. He's an endurance athlete. Before we get going with this episode, however, I want to highlight the 31 or 35 books, and I wanted to ask Don, which of, actually, we'll ask everybody. We'll even ask Matt, what's your favorite in the Matt Fitzgerald library? Which is your favorite book?
Who's that question to? Are you going to have me?
You're going to go first, Don, and then Matt, and then I'll go.
Well, you know, Scott, it would have been nice for you to tell me this before the show, and you just kind of hit me with it. I'm going to say, as I'm looking back in my mind and pulling out, I think a book by Matt Fitzgerald, The 80-20 Rule. You wrote that, right, Matt?
80-20 running. 80-20 running. 80-20 running. Yep.
Yep. I got most of it right. And I like that because it supports going out there and running easy and running healthy, but it demands you to put in that hard work, that 20% of the time, getting out there and running hard at your limits so that you explore that, you build that, but you don't tear yourself up doing it all the time. I like the push of, hey, do some 20 out there, not just all the easy stuff.
Right, or vice versa. Or don't just do the hard stuff.
I guess from my view.
Put
from
most
my
of
view, too much easy.
I'm going to go first. I'm going to go before you, Matt. I'm going to say mine, and I probably use this weekly, diet cults. There's so many diets out there. And I remember reading that book and having you come on the podcast and talk about it, that, you know, there's somebody that goes on a diet and it works for them, thinks, oh, this should work for everybody. And they go out there and they're like a cult and saying, oh, you should only eat asparagus on Wednesdays. And if you only eat asparagus on Wednesdays, you're going to lose a lot of weight and you're going to feel the best in your life. Well, that's not always the case. As a nutritionist, Matt wrote Diet Cult saying, you know, maybe you should have moderation in all things, but also do the experiment of one and see what works for you, and then shut your freaking trap and quit trying to convert everybody to what works for you. That's what I got out of the book. Is that accurate, Matt?
It really is. Yes. Honestly,
it reminds me of that old joke about either marathoners or vegetarians. If you want to know if somebody's a vegetarian, don't worry, they're going to tell you.
Yes.
So they're going to let you know. They're out there promoting their cult.
Yeah. So Matt, of all your 35 children, which one's your favorite?
I have recency bias, so I tend to become enamored of whatever I'm working on. So that's Chasing Mastery, which I know we're going to chat about a little bit, but that one's not out yet, so that's cheating maybe. Of the existing ones, I'm going to go with Life is a Marathon. Just it's a memoir. It's like a braided narrative. That's a literary term for you. It's both the story of my relationship with running and the story of my relationship with my wife, Nataki, which seems like it's a platypus of a book. Like, which one is it? But if you read it through, you see that it's all one story.
I'm going to have to go back and reread that one. I don't remember the stories in there. So thank you for bringing that one up. Before we get into this new book, by the way, let's do a little teaser here. When is the book going to go live?
The official release date, these things don't matter much anymore. They just kind of trickle out. But March 25th is the official.
Okay, so in about a month and a half. Okay, good. Before we get into talking about what Chasing Mastery is and what's in this new book coming out, we found out from you that you just finished the Javelina 100.
Yes.
And I want to get a race report from you and see how it went. This is your first time, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. So, the context is, as you well know, I got COVID very early in the pandemic. And then that turned into long COVID and I lost the ability to run, really couldn't run for 4 years.
Time out real
Yep.
quick.
Yep.
Explain to us what long COVID is. There may be a whole bunch of people that didn't listen to previous episodes with you when we were talking about it. What is long COVID and how did it affect you?
Yeah, it's essentially chronic fatigue syndrome. I didn't know this until I became one of them, but post-viral chronic illnesses have existed as long as viruses have. So some people, they recover fully. That's most of us most of the time. Some people, it's just like, just like a permanent mark left by a viral infection. With long COVID, there are more than 200 documented symptoms. Some of them are pretty weird. I've documented well over 30 in myself.
Wow.
Everything like, the showstopper is the fatigue, and closely related to it, malaise, which is like a feeling like you're poisoned or something. And then things like neuropathy, so like nerve pain and brain fog, so just cognitive impairment, insomnia, on and on it goes. So I've dealt with a lot of that. Yep.
Wow. And you said you had these symptoms for 4 years?
Yep. Still do. So I was 49 when I got sick and was still training really hard. In fact, I got COVID running the Atlanta Marathon, finished 14th overall, won my age group, ran 2:46 on a just absolutely killer course, 1,800 feet of elevation gain and a road marathon. So like I was like on top of the world, and then I just lost everything. And which was very hard, because running is, I started running competitively when I was 11 years old. So it's my identity, it's my passion, it's my work, so it's tough. I would just have imposter syndrome all over again, like coaching runners and not being a runner myself anymore. And early on, I just, I dreamed of like making a comeback, right? So I'm going to beat long COVID. I'm going to get my health back. Then I'm going to get my fitness back. And then I'm going to run the race of my life. And, a month turned into a year into 2 years, 2 years into 3. And it started to sink in that like I was never going to get better. This was my life now. And weirdly, because I was holding off on trying to make a comeback until I did beat long COVID. When I just sort of accepted the fact that I wasn't going to get better, that's when I signed up for Javelina. So
wow.
I'm like, screw it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna figure it out. So yeah, I signed up like at midnight on New Year's Eve, right when registration opens. I had a few drinks, but I had put some. This was planned. This was planned. I set an alarm and everything. And I wasn't running at all at the time. I hadn't even tried to run in months. The last time I tried to run was like the previous New Year's Day. I was like, my symptoms were kind of in remission, and I tried running, and the bottom fell out, and a year went by before I even dared to try again. So yeah, New Year's Day of 2024, I'm like, all right, here we go. I signed up, I paid my money. And I had 11 months to prepare, or 10 months.
Hey Matt,
yes.
before we get into that story, I've got a couple things that I was thinking that you were saying, but I know everybody wants to hear about that journey from not running to completing this, or competing in Javelina. So in retrospect, thinking back to your run, it was Atlanta that you ran, and one of the best races, 2:45 or something marathon, just a strong race. Do you think that your immune system was compromised from training to the capacity or the extent that you trained to run that kind of race?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's science. Yeah. Like if you want to get a virus, run a marathon, and cause like, you're surrounded by thousands of mouth breathers, you know, and yeah, you're suppressing your. It's an acute thing. Like overall, running strengthens your immune system, but if you run to exhaustion, there is a temporary suppression, and that just opens up a door for viruses to sneak in.
You've got snot rockets flying around.
Yep.
I mean, there's all kinds of risks out there.
Yeah, a lot of bodily fluids being traded.
Yeah, reaching in aid station bowls. Now, how about as you came across this? I know you're a scientist. You investigate things, and you come across long COVID. When you looked into it, were you alone, or were there a number of other pockets of people with the same type of symptoms? What did you learn about that?
Yeah, I mean, when you end up, you know, in that number, you tend to network, and also, you know, I kind of went public, you know, with my ordeal, because again, this was still very early in the pandemic, and you know, for me, I thought like, there's no way this could happen to me, but it clearly did, and I knew there were a lot of other people out there who were being kind of like, you know, they were taking risks that they thought they could get away with because they're young, they're healthy, they're fit. You know what I mean? It can't happen to me. I'm invincible. And so I wanted to shout from the rooftops, like, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. Just being an athlete doesn't make you immune from drawing the short straw. But that, you know, one of the positive impacts of that is, you know, my story was out there, and it allowed me to connect with a lot of other long haulers, right, and in particular athlete long haulers. And yes, there's a lot of us.
So I interrupted your story. You hadn't run because of long COVID, and then it's New Year's night. You set your alarm and you sign up for Javelina, and let's take it from there, because that sounds like quite a story.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I knew what I was attempting was close to impossible, and that, you know, I mean, you know, not just that I was likely to fail, and I mean, fail to even make it to the start line, let alone the finish line. Just because of like the kind of like disproportionate payback you can get when you challenge your body with this illness, you know, like just one wrong move and can wipe you out for weeks or even months. So I was aware of that. But yeah, I just wanted to just run the experiment and see what I could do. And so, but I wanted to be smart. I think it was like an insane decision to sign up for the race, but I wanted to make all sane decisions in pursuing the insane goal. So like I waited like 6 weeks before I ran a step. Like I was all walking. And I would just like slowly build up my walking until I got to the point where I was walking 40 miles a week. And definitely, you know, it was exacerbating my symptoms, but all I cared about was like, actually, can I do it the next day? And I ended up, overall, it went better than expected. I did a little bit of running. That went okay. I did a little bit more. And by the end of May, I ran 14 and a half miles without walk breaks. And that, you know, that's not even a quarter of the distance of the race I was preparing for, but like, I thought I would never do that again. And it wasn't fast. And it wasn't pretty.
Hey, Matt, remind me, and I apologize, I don't know the facts here. Was this your first 100-mile attempt?
This is I did the 100K. Yeah, not 100 miles. Yep. So
you did the 100K at Javelina.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So
and
is the first time you've run that distance?
No, and that's because, you know, people said when I told them, people in my inner circle, that what I'd gone and done, they're like, well, I get it. You needed closure. Cause like, you know, for me, this is like a one shot deal. I wasn't going to do more races. I was just going to try to do this. And it really was like, it was closure. I just, you know, my last race, I didn't know was my last race. And that really chapped my hide. It didn't sit well with me. So I just wanted to write a different ending. So it was just like, you know, just a last hurrah. But the reason people said like, okay, I get it. You want closure. Why not just do a 5K? And the reason it had to be 100K is that I had attempted that distance once before. Black Canyon, also, you know, organized by Aravaipa. And so I DNF'd in that race. And that was right before the Atlanta Marathon, right before I got COVID. So that one, I bailed out at 38 miles, and I was really mad at myself. I did not like quitting, and but I thought, well, I'll have other chances. Well, it turned out I didn't have other chances. So that's why it had to be that distance. Yes.
So what was the longest run that you did prior to starting?
Yeah, so here's what happened. So I mentioned I built up. By the end of May, I ran like 14 and a half miles. And then a week later, and at this time, I was still only running once a week. And I would run that distance because it took my body that long to recover. So It was like a lot of walking and then one epic run. And then I would just lick my wounds for 6 days and hope I could come back to baseline and then do it again. So that was actually part of what made it kind of just really engaging and stimulating for me. Is like there was no playbook for this, and I just felt like, as the guy who's written 35 books about running, like if anyone could figure this out, like it's me. So I was just just like I was kind of having fun with having to just wing it and really do the experiment of one thing. But unfortunately, the bottom dropped out. Like I was attempting a 17 miler a week after the 14 and a half miler, and I quit halfway through. And I didn't run another step for 7 weeks. And this is like the prime. This is June, July, and well into August. So by the time I had come back around to feel like I can maybe attempt to try a little test run again, I had 9 weeks left. So I basically, like all I gained, I lost in 7 weeks, and I was starting over with 9 weeks. And I was, still sick, still old, like still deconditioned. Yes.
Matt, what made you think that this was even possible? Because there had to be a moment you're thinking like, even I, who have written 35 books, I don't know if I can connect these dots from where I am now to a finish line. How did you mentally tackle that?
Well, I really just didn't care if it was possible. Because I knew I was actually going for a guarantee, and the guarantee was the experience I would have just trying. And like I knew if like I just went about it in the right headspace, that even if I did fail, I thought there was probably a 95% chance that I would fail. So that was like baked in. It wasn't like I didn't really care if it was possible. Like I knew there was like a 5% chance. I wasn't attempting something that I thought there was a 100% chance I couldn't do, like running across America. So I didn't really particularly care if it was possible. I just wanted to have this experience because I thought I had, in those 4 years of just learning to cope with chronic illness, I felt that I had just gained some wisdom and also become a stronger person. And I wanted to see what that did for me as an athlete, even though like physically I was a ghost of my former self.
So now, Matt, one thing that we have never done on Trail Runner Nation is ask people about their race as they're going through. But I'm gonna change that right now because I've got to know what was going through your head at mile 14, at mile 17. You've got all of these miles ahead of you. Where were you at that point as you're traveling on this hero's journey?
To properly answer that question, I have to answer your previous question. What was my longest run?
Yeah. I'm sorry, I've got in the middle of that.
Yeah, no, it's fine. So with 9 weeks left, I did like a little, like a gentle run walk just to see if I could do even that much. And then I don't know why exactly this happened. I have theories because I was doing a lot of stuff kind of in the background to try to work on my health and just have a better foundation. But those last 9 weeks were borderline miraculous, the progress I made. So I survived that initial test run. And then in the final few weeks, and I was taking some big risks here. Like I was, just knowing what I know about exercise science, I was like doing some not really long, but very, very intense, like hill interval, like 8 times 30 seconds as hard as I could up a hill. Cause I knew like that's not too specific to an ultra, but it gets you fit fast. And I just needed to take fitness wherever I could get it. But then with the long runs, I was able, a few weeks out, I was able to run 16 miles. So I got back to where I was before what I call the lost period. And then the next week I did a 20-mile walk run on the race course, survived that. And then I ran I'm wearing the shirt, the pull over. I ran the Flagstaff Marathon, which is like an absolutely brutal marathon, 2,400 feet of elevation, all trail,
Nice.
starts at 8,000 feet and goes up. I barely survived that, but I'm really glad I did it because I saw like how my disease would react to that kind of challenge. And it was, I just had like a full on just like nervous system freak out in the race. Like I began hyperventilating, my heart rate was pinned, and I couldn't do anything to bring it back, and somehow managed to finish. The people who'd come to support me tried to take my keys away from me because like I was just such a wreck. Like I was still hyperventilating 20 minutes after the race ended. And but I'm like, hey, I just finished my first race in 1,860 days, but who's counting? And so like that was my springboard, like going into Javelina. So I'm like, well, I can survive barely a marathon. And so like I had a goal and everything, and like, you know, you have 29 hours to finish that race, but and initially on New Year's Day when I started, I'm like, oh, I'm going to need those 29 hours. Like I thought I would just walk the whole thing, but I would still get my closure. But I still wanted to approach it as an athlete, and I wanted to just finish as fast as I could, even though it wasn't going to be very fast. So I had a sense of like maybe what I could do, and that's what I was trying to do during the race. I knew I would have to do a bunch of walking, but you know, it got really, really hairy because like you know, it was 99 degrees. It was like record heat that day, and one of the 200 plus documented symptoms of long COVID is loss of the capacity to thermoregulate normally. So like I was at like 99 degrees, like doing an ultra, you know, in like an exposed desert is going to challenge anyone. But like for me, it was like just dangerous, like truly dangerous. And it got laps 2 and 3. It got like really, really hairy. You know, like gaming out like medevac scenarios and stuff like that, just like circling the drain, but was able to rebound both times and finished.
How did you manage or incorporate or strategize this walking into your run, knowing it needed to be part of your plan? Not wait for the race until I have to walk, but sounds like you took walking and you inserted it strategically into your race plan.
Yeah. Yeah, that gets back to just having all this experience that I could bring to bear, and just like I really just relished the challenge of like having to figure out something that was just hard to figure out. So just based on like the last few longer runs I had done, the reconnaissance loop I did on the race course, my plan was to run the entire first loop. It's the coolest part of the day. I knew I could run, 22 miles if I kept the pace, in check. And then I wanted to switch, intentionally, walking before I had to for the second loop, 5 minutes running, 1 minute walking. And then like, I just being realistic, I'm like, if I make it to the third loop, I'm going to be walking the whole thing. But I had done so much walking and training that I could walk 4 miles an hour, like even on like pretty challenging terrain. So I thought I could get, so even if I have to walk the whole thing, if I'm not like just like completely falling apart, maybe I can do that third loop in 5 hours. So my goal actually, I mean, I wasn't like, my heart wasn't set on it, but I thought like barring catastrophe that I could complete the race in 12 hours. And I ended up finishing in 12:09. So I was kind of right. Yeah.
That's, I've got to think that as you look back at all of your race accomplishments, that's got to be up there in the top 1 or 2. Because what an amazing race and outcome when you went in without, any idea of what could happen here, because you hadn't experienced that type of journey before.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, without question, of the hundreds of races I've ever done, there's no way I could have accomplished what I did at Javelina at any earlier point in my athletic journey. Like I didn't have all the tools. So like, I just, I felt like I was a stronger person, and I needed every iota of that strength to get through it. And that was very satisfying.
Yeah, so
Wow,
much of
congratulations.
so much of racing is in the mind, and you could easily have sabotaged yourself before you even got to the race, before you even trained for the race, but you didn't. You persevered, and I think it gives inspiration for all of the rest of us that have done amazing things that we felt are amazing for us and got away from it, but want to get back into it. And it's okay, but it has to be the outlook. You wanted to finish. That was your number one thing, not to surpass any of your previous best runs. You went out there with a different agenda. We're going to get through this. We're going to be smart about it. We're going to navigate our way through to, protect our body and not, create a problem. Scott.
And I'll say, as you were telling your story, Matt, we fall back on, I can't remember the book now, Don, where we learned about misogi, which is the practice of setting a goal that you have a very high likelihood of failure,
50-50.
but enough, a very small portion ability to succeed, and you're not, it's safe. You're not going to die. Now, you probably went a little bit beyond that. You could have really messed things up here if you would have not done it. But I just love the whole idea. You mentioned that you were kind of thinking this was a closure. Is it the last chapter in Matt Fitzgerald running, or are you going to, with this, catapult yourself back in and maybe dip your toe a little bit?
Yeah, it's funny. My friend Jake, who was there to support me that day, one of the first people I told, like, look what I've gone and done. He said, he knows me very well, and he said, "There's no way, like if you pull this thing off, there's no way you'll be able to stop." And for me, I told him and everyone, like I'm not looking past this race. In the past, I would place a lot of importance on big races that I spent, months preparing for, but I always kind of viewed them as stepping stones. It's like, oh yeah, I want this race to be the best race of my life so far, but no matter how well I do, like I want to do even better in the future. And like the whole way through this journey, I was not looking past it, which left me in a weird place when I actually did pull it off, because I at the very least, I had proven to myself that there is still the possibility of running in my future, not the way it was in the past. So that's a great thing. That's a great thing to have. And Jake is right. Like the old me would have just started plotting and scheming right away. Like, how do I top this? But I really haven't done that. I do plan to go back to Javelina, as a matter of fact. But it's still with the same mindset, and I'm not just like scouring, race calendars to find opportunities to raise the bar. Like now I can actually run with the people who come to Dream Run Camp, which I couldn't do for the longest, and just being able to do that is great. So I think, at least for now, that's sort of what it looks like. It's not me trying to like go back to the past and kind of reclaim it. Like I'm super grateful that I can run again. I recognize that like I'm in a different place with it now, and I'm really open to allowing it to just come to me, and not have to like decide what it is.
In retrospect, do you think that this 100K at Javelina was beneficial for you? Maybe the mental side, but did it set you back? Like, wow, that's going to take me a while to recover. Where are you at today as a result of that race?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was counting on, like in putting a moonshot out there the way I did, was what I call the high bar effect. And it's like one of these like wrinkles of human psychology where, your reach has to exceed your grasp. And for me, I don't know. I have something that a friend of mine who's a pain expert refers to as pain indifference, where like I think it's like as a result of like decades of being an endurance athlete, where you're just trying to get good at being uncomfortable. Like I got to the point where I actually wasn't even really trying very hard to get better, to work on my health, because even though like I was kind of suffering every day, I could still function, except when I couldn't. But for the most part, I could function, and I thought I don't have time to like try, to find like the miracle cure. Like I'm a busy person. I love my life. I love writing and dream run camp. So I can do these things even though I feel kind of terrible all the time. And so there was just kind of like this complacency. And so, you know, a saner person or a non-athlete would have just been like, you know what, my New Year's resolution is like, I'm going to like try 3 things to get a little healthier. For me, that wouldn't have worked because it's just like, I can't get excited about that. I'm sorry. I had to just like put like a BHAG out there, just like a total moonshot, and then count on the high bar effect. So, as soon as I like, forked over the money to get my race number, I started getting serious. Like even stuff I knew I should try, but just like, honestly, getting back to diet cults, like intermittent fasting, there's like pretty good research that is helpful for people with long COVID, but I'm like, I don't want to skip breakfast. But, once I had the date with destiny out there, I'm like, I'll try that. And so I just started like being much more proactive in trying things. And yeah, sure, a lot of them didn't work, but some did. And to get back to your question, like that's what I've come away with. Like, now I have like a toolkit, things like I know can help me. They're not miracle cures, but they'll always be there for me if I'm just avail myself of them.
Date with destiny. That's a great term, and one that I think I should apply. There's things you need to put out there to stretch yourself and for your own goals. The date with destiny. I like it. Mm-hmm. Scott, we need to talk about Dream Run Camp. We need to talk about the new book coming out, and we didn't anticipate it going this way.
I was gonna say, Matt, this book better be an amazing book because we just had 30 minutes of discussion that was amazing. I mean, it was an amazing trip that you led us down for the last 30 minutes. So you better not disappoint us with this book. The title of the book is Chasing Mastery. What does that mean?
Yeah, so this gets to, and there's actually a segue here. There's a connection.
Okay.
Yep, I can spell it out for you. So, I am a running coach. That's kind of one of the hats I wear. And the way I view my job is that my role is to help runners move toward mastery of their sport. And mastery simply means like, honestly, just like fulfilling your potential, like like being able to look at yourself in the mirror, like when you're well along in the journey and say, you know what? There were some bumps in the road, but like right now I'm as good at running as I can possibly be. Like I have fulfilled my potential. Now, maybe my potential isn't spectacular, it's not Olympian, but like I've come all the way in that journey. And what's behind mastery is it's really just, that term connotes control, and that's really what it is. And I think there's 2 ways to be good at running. One is the way everyone thinks of, like you can run faster and farther than other people. What I don't like about that is like there's a lot of stuff that the athlete doesn't control that's bundled up in that, like your genetic makeup or even your age. Like those things you can't help. So like, do you really deserve a pat on the back? If you're faster than other people, partly because you won the genetic lottery and you're 22. For me as a coach, like I like to keep the focus on the things you can control. And that's everything. Like, being a runner is, from one perspective, just a series of decisions. Like you're making decisions all the time. And most of them, you're not even conscious that you're making a decision. Some of them are small and inconsequential, like, oh, I'm going to run in the no man's land between low and moderate intensity, like day after day after day after day after day, like so many people do. Well, that's a small decision that adds up over time and actually limits your development. And there are also much bigger decisions, like, do I hire a coach? If I do, like, who do I hire? Like, do I jump on board like this latest methodological trend, or do I just be more skeptical and take a wait and see approach? Like all these decisions, and to really master the sport of running and get to be as good at it as you could possibly be, you learn to control the controllable. Again, it's like you will never control everything, but it's really effort, attitude, and judgment. Like those 3 things. And, most runners are self-limiting most of the time in these 3 dimensions. And so there's like all of us kind of start at 0% of fulfilling your potential. and to get to 100%, like that's a process. But it's like, if you look at it that way, I think it's very rewarding, because you're no longer comparing yourself to the genetic lottery winners. You're just like recognizing like, oh, there is such a thing as getting to be as good as I can be at this. And let's see how close I can get.
Yeah, during that race, you have your genetic lottery winner. They're still having to make all the right decisions. So they can fall apart too.
Yep.
But when you have 200 runners in a race, you potentially have one winner, because that's just the definition. But they can all run a masterful race if they make all the right decisions. Everybody lined up with a bib has the opportunity to run a masterful race.
Yes. And that's as far as the segue, like that's what made because someone might have looked at what I was attempting with Javelina and say like, what's the point? You're a ghost of your former self. Like me in my prime, could have won that race, honestly. But so it's like, what's the point of going back there just to run like hours slower than you would have run but before you got sick? But for me, it was just that. It was like a beautiful opportunity to demonstrate mastery, or to move one step closer to mastery. Like when your body has less to give, like your mind has to give more. And for me, like I would never have wished long COVID on myself, but like I did view it as a kind of an opportunity. Just like I couldn't just lean on physical strength the way I had been able to in the past. So I had to look for strength elsewhere.
Matt, I love this whole concept, and Don and I have talked about it before. There are some elite athletes that we have watched over the years that have performed extremely well, and then all of a sudden just disappeared. And maybe they truly have quit running, that they've just got to the point, if I can't win, I'm not going to do it anymore. And then there are the folks that I really admire that used to be the top. I mean, I'm thinking of Andy Jones Wilkins, good friend of ours, that finished in the top 10 at Western States a gazillion times. And now he has 2 hip resurfaces that he's dealing with, and he goes out there and he's chasing cutoffs. But I think he's just as passionate and just as happy and rewarded by the races he's running today than the time he was second place in 2005 at Western States.
I'm glad you brought that up, Scott.
We'll make sure we clip that and send it to him, because he loves to talk about 2005. We just had a good friend of ours go out, and he's older than us, and he went out and did the Arrowhead 135. That's one of the hardest races, where you have to pull a sled across the frozen tundra. The temperatures are cold. You're in the snow, and he's had his hip replaced. Wow. And I just think, it depends on how you're taking this sport and how you see your identity. And I can't even imagine your situation where you were almost denied that identity because of long COVID, but you found a way that you were able to bring it back and say, you know what, I'm still a runner. I'm a very different runner, but I'm still a runner.
Yeah, there's a great quote. So one of my favorite books, I almost mentioned it, Iron War, about great rivalry between Dave Scott and Mark Allen, titans of triathlon in the 1980s and into the 90s. And there's a quote from that book from Tom Warren, who won the second Ironman. He said to the Sports Illustrated writer Barry McDermott, who wrote about the very second Ironman, where there were only 15 people doing it. Tom Warren was interviewed before the race, and he said, yeah, my training hasn't gone that great, but sometimes it's better that way. And I knew exactly what he meant, because like this was a guy who just believed it, like in his mental advantage. And he's like, yeah, you know what, my body's like a B- right now, but my head is an A+.
So important that you wouldn't want it the other way around, because if it was, you had every excuse. I know that when things get hard out there, I start looking for excuses, and I think the trump card would be long COVID. I would say, no wonder I'm fatigued. I better sit on this rock and sit here for a while till somebody comes to help me out. That's got to be a very large lift to have long COVID, and you beat that. I mean, you thought through it, worked through it, and you stayed on top of it. And that's more than 99 degrees. That's more than 10,000 feet of climb. It's more than a blister in the foot. There's a lot of weight when you're talking about something like that, and you took care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, in your book, you talk about the analogy of the 2:30 and 3:30 marathon. I want you to explain that, and then answer the question: do we, as a culture, overemphasize talent versus self-development?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that gets back to the two different definitions of what it means to be good at running. Yeah, I've actually done this survey, like occasionally here at Dream Run Camp. I'll just ask the current attendees, like, what does it mean to be good at running? And usually it's that, like you win, you're faster, and that's fine. Like if you have like a favorite musician, well, one of the reasons they're your favorite musician is that they're talented. They practice hard. But talent it's absolutely fine to appreciate talent. But when you're an athlete yourself, it's very easy, I think, to make too much of that. And it can be just a form of self-limitation. And as a coach, like I try to just remove all of that and focus on what's possible. So yeah, if I said, who's better at running, a 2:30 marathoner or a 3:30 marathoner? Most people would say the 2:30 marathoner, like knowing only that. And it's because a 2:30 marathon is faster than a 3:30. But what if I told you, that the 2:30 marathoner actually has the potential to run 2:10, whereas the 3:30 marathoner has the potential to run 3:30. So like the 3:30 marathoner has reached their full potential, whereas the 2:30 marathoner is sandbagging and actually just coasting on their talent a little bit and wanting everyone to think he or she is a better runner just because the time is faster, when in fact there's a lot of untapped potential there. So I'm just trying to get my fellow runners to just appreciate that way of looking at it, especially when it comes to your journey and what that mindset can unlock for you.
Boy, I think you have taken running, and in that description, you've placed it in the right spot. A perfect definition, reaching your potential. Don't compare yourself to others, and decrease your joy because you're comparing yourself against some genetic freak that there's no way that you need a bike, an electric bike, to catch that guy or gal. So I think being content and being satisfied of your own journey and taking stock of your potential, and then and taking a look. And I wrote this down earlier when you were talking about looking in the mirror at your person. This is my vehicle. This is what I have right now to make it through this course, whatever it might be. And you're looking and you're being honest. And I love that thought. And then I extended it to, and what about that same analysis on the trail in the middle of a long whatever run to say, if I had a mirror right now, I looked at me, I could see I'm a little down on this, I'm a little down on this, I'm still strong here. Taking an honest assessment of where you are, then to recalculate and re-strategize how you're going to complete this thing. Being honest enough to take that moment on the run and take a hard look at yourself. And now a new plan. And maybe that plan's walk. Maybe the plan's decrease 15 seconds a mile. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and then you can quickly so I 100% agree. And then you can take that to kind of the level of tactics by going back to those three things you can control, like effort, attitude, and judgment, and look at each of those. Like, am I giving my best effort right here? Am I maintaining a positive attitude? And am I making good decisions? Am I using my best judgment? Like, those are the only things you can really control. And, you can't even control all of those things. Absolutely. Right. It's like we don't entirely control our emotions, but we have, more control over them than we often recognize. So yeah, just taking stock at what, when it gets hard and you start to feel negative, or maybe your effort starts to slag, or you made a boneheaded decision, like maybe like a fear-based decision, and it blew up in your face. Like those moments, like kind of sports psychologists refer to them as action crises. Like, kind of the shit hits the fan at some point in a race. And like, those are the opportunities to just sort of like time out, and just like, just go back to like, recognize what you can't control. It's 99 degrees out here. I don't have a thermostat for the desert. So like, what can I control, and is there room to level up any of those three things?
So past long COVID and past your accomplishment here at Javelina, how has your dream run camp changed because of your experiences, or has it?
I mean, Dream Run Camp has changed me, I would say. Because the whole idea was to just kind of like almost like demote myself to like a secondary character in my own story, and put the spotlight on other runners, which is really new for me. Like I've never really had, my wife is just like kind of like a born helper. She always wants to pour into other people, and has, since I've known her. Me, it was my older brother nicknamed me Project Matt, because it was always about like Matt's goals, like Matt's achievements, like Matt. So just like, I know. So I'm very like late to the party in terms of like seeing how rewarding it can be to put yourself second and put other people first. And it really has. And what I was trying to do with Dream Run Camp is I wanted to pivot my career and life in a way that like I felt like I could be living up to my potential, even when all I could do was show up. There were days of just getting out of bed was like my biggest win for the day. And like, I wanted to do something where even that would be enough. And it really has worked. Dream Run Camp, it's like, I'm not going to retire a billionaire by doing this, but it's made such an impact on the lives of the people who've come here. Like, it's really been like life-changing for people. Like, running is just sort of this common language, and it's really all about just like bringing people together, just like distilling the best, and like getting everyone to show up as their best selves, and see what kind of magic we can make together. So I think it's like the causal chain is not from me to Dream Run Camp, but like Dream Run Camp to me. Like all that experience is like, I think a lot of people are out of sorts these days with like everything that's going on in the world, and like we have kind of like a bubble here where it's just, you're reminded like that there's good in every person, and that again, it's like controlling the controllable. Like, I can't affect climate change very much or whatever, but like I can create and maintain a space where it's just like, just all good vibes, positivity, hard work, hard fun. And the fact that it is actually working is like, because it might not have, and that would have been kind of devastating, but it is working. And like, I see myself doing this, for the rest of my life.
Matt, we've talked about Dream Run Camp in previous episodes. Those that are listening and they're thinking Dream Run Camp, I've never heard of that. You can go on to dreamrun.com or mattfitzgerald.org and find more information. But tell us why Dream Run Camp is different than other running camps that are out there. What makes it unique?
Yep. In 2017, I spent a summer in Flagstaff. So I was still living in California, Northern California at that time, but talked Ben Rosario, the coach of the Hoka Northern Arizona Elite professional running team, into just letting me embed myself with the team for 13 weeks. And they were the best 13 weeks of my life. So I was 46 years old at the time, had never even been close to being a pro runner myself, but I just got to live the life. I got to like just pretend that running was the only thing that mattered for 13 weeks. And it was almost kind of like really kind of a spiritual thing, because just like that clarity of purpose, I would wake up in the morning and I had one job: to get better at running. Flagstaff is amazing. The team I was with was incredible. I was just, it was like every moment was a pinch me moment for those 13 weeks. And it really was about the experience. I did happen to run a PR in the marathon at the end of it. which was another one of those things that I thought was impossible going into it. And so I wrote a book about it, Running the Dream, and that was nice because it allowed other runners to kind of live vicariously through me. But I kind of got an itch to take it one step further and make a version of this experience available to any runner who wants it. Our slogan is "Let your passion, not your ability, decide how far you go." And that's like the ethos, because so many runners, like, they put up these barriers. They were like me, like they would love to go all in for running and see what they could do with it, for whatever reason. But they don't let themselves because they're too slow, or they're too old, or they're too new, or they're not healthy enough, or whatever it is. And like, we're just trying to remove those barriers. Now, if you just would rather not go all the way with your running, well, that's a great reason not to. But a lot of these other ones are not good reasons if in your heart of hearts you really want to. So that's why Dream Run Camp exists. So yeah, there's a ton of adult running camps out there. They're all great. I've been to a bunch of them, but most of them are like 3 to 4 days. Everyone arrives at the same time. Their schedules are chock-a-block for 3 or 4 days, and then they all scatter to the 4 winds. Dream Run Camp, it's more of like a residential format. We have 2 houses, a coach in residence in each house, all kinds of amenities, like a team of experts around us. And our minimum stay is 1 week. We do rolling attendance because it's a small scale thing. So you can come as long as there's availability, you can come whenever you want, and you can stay from 1 to 12 weeks. You can really do a full training block here, which is kind of the idea. We're encouraging those longer stays because that's where the real magic happens. And so, yeah, it's just a different model. I love it. I never leave. So.
and it's around the year. I mean, there's no start dates or end date. You can sign up and come down there in April or whenever your job allows you. Or I think it's just a very unique model that you've come up with.
And it might even be a good way to kickstart off a training regime. If like I've got a race planned, and if I go there and I get a week or 4 into this, I could really, it would be kick this thing off where I can have success that I'm looking for in the race and acquire knowledge along the way, because you're going to be around some of the smartest people and people that have done that and been there and had your problem and figured it out.
Yeah, it's like the benefits, I think, are both tangible and intangible. People know, oh, it's high altitude. I'll get more red blood cells, and yeah, you get that. But like a lot of the things that people most value about the experience are the things it's hard to even advertise. Really just like being able to slow down and like just feel like you're putting your normal life on pause, and just being able to like just fully indulge something you're really passionate about. You can just see it. Like, people will tell me like, oh man, I'm sleeping better than ever, or, like my HRV has never looked this good. And yeah, there's a lot of benefits.
It's amazing how much life takes out of your running potential. There's a lot of things that are silent that, they affect our sleep or how we're eating or just our mindset or training frequency or intensity. All of it is sabotaged by life's, routines that put a demand on us.
Yeah. And of course, you have to go back to your life. Some people don't want to. But it's just nice to, I mean, for me, like those 13 weeks, like I knew that was it. Like I wasn't going to like extend it or do it again. It was like, it was a Midsummer Night's Dream, which made just like every moment of it precious. And I will always treasure the memories.
Matt, have you ever had an athlete that came to one of your dream camps and ended up moving to Flagstaff so they could just be there all 100% of the time?
Yes.
Wow.
More than one. Yes.
Wow. Yep. You should be on the Chamber of Commerce or something.
I basically am. Yeah.
Hey, Matt, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your personal story about Javelina and your health issues, and telling us a little bit about this book. We had just barely
we didn't get past the cover. We didn't even get into the book.
Hey, the one thing I wanted to get into, but we just don't have time, and this is the cliffhanger, if you remember what that was back in the day, the 5 pillars of mastery. But you're not going to hear from it. You're not going to hear anything about that on this podcast because we want you to buy the book. Go out and get the book and become a master of your own athletic career and potential. Again, the book is out March 25th, I think you said.
Yes.
And it's available for pre-order where? On Amazon, mattfitzgerald.org. Where else can they go?
Yep, all the usual places. Yes, I've got my own publishing company now, and so we're publishing it through that. But we have distribution through Simon and Schuster, so they're big, and you can find it.
Nice.
Excellent.
I think people should read the book, gain what they can from it, and then we should have another discussion and go back over it and do some read.
You know what? That's a great idea, Don. Let's, after March 25th, when we get our copies, let's read it and then have Matt back on to teach us a little bit more of what is in between the lines that he wrote.
Right on.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let's plan on that. If it's okay with you, Matt. See, we've already decided over on our side, but we have no idea whether we're going to have a guest or not.
It's about guilt. We're guilting you into coming back, Matt.
No, this is my favorite podcast, and I mostly write books just so I can get back on your show.
We had a feeling. We didn't want to put words in your mouth.
We actually do a show so we can speak to you about your books. No,
it's the only reason why we do a podcast.
Love it.
Hey, whatever you do, whether you're listening to podcasts or reading books, put those down, for crying out loud, and lace up your shoes. Go out and run.
Mas.